You're unmuted.
Thank you. Okay. I'd like to call this meeting to order, the Benzie County Board of Commissioners. Today is September 10th, 2024. We're in the Frank Walder House boardroom. Roll call, please.
Cunningham,
Here.
Janot,
Yes.
Markey,
Here.
Nye, here, Roloffs,
Here.
Sauer,
Here.
Worsakki.
Here.
Everybody present.
Please stand for the invocation and pledge of allegiance. Dear Lord, thank you for the opportunity to serve the citizens of Benzie County. I would ask for your guidance with the decisions we make today. Please keep all of our public safety personnel safe and free from harm. In the name of your Son, amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please be seated. Are there any changes, deletions to the agenda?
I move that we accept the agenda as written.
Second.
Oh,
Evan did. He was being a little quiet.
He's very me.
Motion and support, further discussion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? So move. Approval and or correction of the minutes from August 27, 2024.
I placed on your desk this morning a request from Ed Hooterp to adjust the minutes from last time regarding the Parks and Recreation issue and Land Conservancy. The wording of wash their hands and maintaining seems a bit harsh. So we're just looking to maybe change that language a little bit because in a nutshell, we're really evaluating that relationship between the county and the conservancy and who's responsible for what when it comes to Parks and Recreation. And so Ed has made that request and what I've passed out to all of you. Artie's nutshell again.
Do you have a better way than to say that so we can amend the minutes?
Something in the lines of the Land Conservancy and Parks and Recreation are evaluating the responsibilities of county properties.
Ed, does that satisfy you? Chair, do you mind if I ask a question?
Yeah, pretty much anything you want to do will satisfy me. I just don't want those folks who are providing essential services to us to read in our official proceedings that they're not.
Okay.
So anything that I personally, I would just strike that whole phrase, but whatever you do to soften this is fine with me.
Okay.
A misunderstanding probably comes back to me, probably wasn't clear enough in Parks and Rec, but we don't want to extend it misunderstanding any farther than it's already go. That's all.
Thanks for taking the time to look at them.
Thanks, Ed.
I'm going to make a motion. Jeanette makes a motion to accept the minutes as amended.
Support.
The question I got is, where is it in the minutes?
Like it's under.
Right there. You found it.
There's motions and support. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? So move. Brings us to our first public input. Would anybody like to share under public input? Hearing none. Close public input and move on to elected officials and department heads. Sheriff?
Morning, Sheriff Rosa.
Sir?
We've had a couple of weeks of a lot of tragedy in this county with crashes and water related incidents. So our people are doing well. We had excellent support from our neighbors and our other first responders inside and outside of our counties. on all of these things. So that's where mutual aid comes in, and we appreciate all of that. We often find ourselves helping others, but in the last couple of weeks, we've needed help and they've been there for us. So we're very appreciative to all of our partners out there for these events to offer help.
My biggest concern, and I think that we all feel the same way, is make sure our people are being taken care of.
And we are.
Mentally, physically, whatever we can offer to do to help, we want to help.
Yeah, we're making sure of that.
Good.
So that's happening in our world since we last met. On another note, I got word this morning that Elmer's is going to be ready to start our project midweek next week on top of the hill with our resurfacing. So
Wow.
that's exciting, chaotic, but exciting as well. So we're going to be gearing up for that in the next few days. So
Good. Any questions for Sheriff?
that's what I got.
Just one.
Yes, sir.
I did see on the news there, the Frankfurt Fire Chief. And I believe the city of Frankfurt is talking to the Coast Guard about actually staffing some of this stuff. Has there been any feedback to you guys or?
Oh, you know, it's, of course, we've had many conversations with them regarding the manpower, and that's what it boils down to is manpower shortage, personnel, I should say, shortage, nationwide. So, they're looking at options, of course. They're not totally discounting the fact that they might be here sometime, but at this point, we don't have that, any outlook or any, input. So we're trying our best to pick the slack up, which it's been a busy summer. Under Sheriff can account for that. He's been out there a lot as well. We've just had a lot of things happen this year out there, in the big lake. So,
I appreciate your effort and your hard work.
yeah. Thank you.
Hopefully we can get some help.
Yep. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, Sheriff.
Anybody else?
Thank you. Other department heads, elected officials. We'll close that and move on to finance.
Good morning, Kelly Long, County Treasurer. So bills today or this week, we've got starting August 23rd, 24 through September 5th of 24, $1,325,545.72.
Make a motion to pay the bills.
9 seconds.
Motion support. Is there any discussion? Roll call, please.
Janai,
Yes.
Markey,
Yes.
Nye. Yes. Roloff.
Yes,
Sauer,
Yes.
Worsakki,
Yes.
Cunningham,
Yes.
motion carried.
thank you.
Perfect. Quick update. I told you guys I'd have an update for you on the Wayside settlement after my conference. We are Wayside Church Settlement. The settlement's going to happen within about a year from now. The first email that you received from me was the accurate email. I've talked about first right of refusals before. That is not an option because the settlement is based on auction proceeds only. And those weren't auctioned off. So I think we're good. We got plenty of money. It's going to be a year. We'll keep that sucker where it's at, earn a little bit on it, and we should be okay. Secondly, September, busy month for us. We'll start doing all our good things we need to do. Auditors will be here October 14th and 15th for prelims. And the first full week of December for the actual audit, they'll be here. And I believe that's all I have at the moment.
This is the same firm we've been using for some time.
Yes, I believe this is year 3 this year. So,
Good, thank you.
yeah.
Kelly, I would only ask at the last meeting, we were told by our administrator that the Maples bond can't be paid off prematurely. Were you surprised to see that?
Yes, I was. We sent, we made an early payment because I thought we could do so. I went through the papers. I could not find anything in the papers telling us we couldn't. And I got an email 2 days later stating that they were sending us the money back because they could not do that. It was, yeah. So, but yeah, we can, as we go forward, I think we've only got what, 6 more collections. 2030 is our last year. I think at some point we should be able to continue to reduce that millage rate because I mean, I've got some of that money invested. And then we'll just wipe it off the
Appreciate that.
books. Yeah.
Really, since you're up there, I was in a discussion recently where a municipality was looking at reducing or eliminating for 1 year the collection of their operating millage. And I wondered if, when you take Headley into account, your Headley restricts you as to how much you can increase the previous year's millage assessment by a factor. If you were to move that, let's just use the number 0, then what would happen if the following year you wanted to reinstate any of that? Would you be limited to that formula that has to be applied to 0?
It's a good question. Brianne's here, right? I'm not sure how they could.
I cautioned him on it.
Yeah,
I said I'd get a legal opinion before I did that.
yeah.
And that, when you're preparing your 4029,
Mhm,
you'll have the max that you can levy.
right.
And so because if they choose not to levy that max, it won't impact next year. Headley is then applied to whatever that is for that year, next year, and then that'll be the max they can levy. Just because there's a maximum they can, it doesn't mean they have to levy that.
But what if they reduced it to 0, no collection? The following year, would the formula be applied to what the previous year's max could be?
Yes,
Okay.
right.
All right.
Not what they actually levy.
Gotcha.
The maximum stays the maximum every year. What you levy is up to that board at the time. So
Okay.
you can always levy up to the maximum, but you could choose to levy 0. The maximum allowed still maintains, and that's the number then that's utilized for the following year for any sort of rollback.
Yes.
So like we've had some years where we reduced a collection.
Yep.
Like for instance, on the bond.
Yep.
Same thing, the following year, we could have increased it.
Correct.
Okay,
Up to the maximum.
up to the max.
Yep.
The maximum was established the prior year, right?
The maximum is established each year based on the previous year's maximum and then the rollback that's applied.
The previous year's maximum, even though the maximum wasn't collected.
Correct.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Be a test on that later.
And you don't pigeonhole yourself by lowering a levy 1 year. You're not,
It's-
yeah.
I just was curious what would happen when I took it to 0, that's all.
oh, sure.
Alrighty, we're gonna move on to new business. Item A, consider extending the agreement with MGT Consulting to produce the cost allocation plan for Benzie County.
Each year, our office works with MGT to provide various financial documents and documents related to the size of our building, the use of our building, and those sorts of things. And they provide what is called a cost allocation plan, which is called for under Federal Regulation 2 CFR Part 200. This is the plan that we utilize primarily in our office for establishing the administrative fees for the various outside funding sources of the general fund. So the administrative fee that comes from EMS, central dispatch, animal control, those sorts of funds. We don't have to take that administrative fee, but it gives us that opportunity and gives us the number of which we could take. This document is also provided to Lansing. It is utilized in establishing funding related to friend of the court services is my understanding as well. So child support and those sorts of things. So we have to do this plan every year anyways. MGT Consulting has been doing it for a bit of time here with Benzie County. I am asking that we extend it an additional 1 year, and then at that time we will go out to RFP for this plan. I've spoke with some other county administrators about who they're utilizing for this plan, and as a whole, MGT seems to have the market in this. But it's my understanding that a lot of counties are going to go out to bid here soon to decide who's going to do their do their cost allocation plan. I foresee most counties probably staying with MGT because from my understanding is there's not a ton of contractors or consultants who do this wide cost allocation plan in Michigan. So I'm simply asking for just a 1 year extension, which is allowed for in the current agreement that we have. which gives us time to finish that last cost allocation plan as well as prepare an accurate RFP to go out to RFP for anybody in the future.
And the reason why you would go out for an RFP is not because of the quality of the work, but cost, is that right?
Well, cost, and it's good business to just check and see to make sure we're still getting the best bang for our buck. They have increased it a little bit up to $8,000. It originally, when I first came here in 2021, I believe it was at like 63 or 6,500, somewhere in the 6,000s. So they've increased it pretty minimally. Up until I had gotten here, the years that you did utilize them, they never increased it, is my understanding. So it's good business to go out for RFP. And so looking into the future and projecting one more year, I'd like to get out of them before we go through the big process of RFP. Typically, this process will start immediately right after our audit is done. And so given the timing now, we're just getting back into auditing season, and based on when the audit's done, I don't think we'll have ample time to secure a new agency if that's where we end up leading. And so that's why I'd like to delay it just one more year and kind of do the RFP in their last year of services almost simultaneously.
Katie, where I'm going with this is if we're satisfied with the quality of work and the cost of doing business has gone up between, sounds like 20 to 30%. Would we be better off to spend our time negotiating to lock in that price for the next 3 years versus doing an RFP for next year?
We could, they have agreed to keeping it at 8,000 for the next couple of years. I was simply only seeking a 1-year extension because we haven't went to RFP in quite some time. But we could do that instead. I've been given both. I do believe they do great work. $8,000 really is a drop in the bucket for this 200-page report they provide. But I do think it's good business, and that it is our practice to go out to RFP periodically just to ensure we're getting the best bang for our buck. I don't know what's out there.
From an internal controls, I agree completely. But you've just shared with us, there's really limited number of companies that provide this service.
Correct.
That the service they've been providing us with and the outcome has been satisfactory.
It has.
If we could lock in our price so it could be predicted for the next 2 or 3 years, to me, that would be more important than having you take the time to do an RFP, which might bring you back to the same conclusion anyway.
Yeah. It's up to this board. My recommendation was to do an RFP to keep with our general practice, but we do not have to. If the board would like to simply extend it for another 2 to 3 years and do that in a couple of years, we can. I'm fine with that. I just believe it's good practice to double check.
Again, I'm not disagreeing with you with that, but they're willing to lock that price in.
My understanding is that they would lock it in for at least 2 to 3 years. Yes.
Get them to lock it in for 3 years, and that's it. Then we can predict their cost.
And we're satisfied with the cost savings or the cost and the efficiency of it.
Yeah, Stephanie, who provides the service on behalf of MGT to Benzie County, she's the same person I've been working with since I've been here. So she has history with Benzie County. She does do a good job. It's quite the dynamic report, if I may say. So again,
You have a network of other administrators. Would it be possible to reach out and just find out ballpark what other entities, municipalities are paying?
again,
I mean, I hate to stray away from a practice that we have established of going out to RFP. I mean, if it was in the near distant future where we had done that, I would be more inclined to say, sure, lock them in. But I would at least like to get an idea that they are competitive, and we could delay this decision for 2 weeks or no?
yeah, it could be delayed 2 weeks. The next round of determining that plan will start when our audit is done because it's based on that audited years of financials. So we have a little wiggle room. Yes.
With that said, because I think that's prudent guidance, Janet's going to make a motion that we table this request until the next meeting to determine what costs on average are being charged with our peers. Is that fair?
Support on that.
Motion and support. Further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So moved. Item B, consider entering into an interlocal government agreement with the city of Frankfurt related to emergency communication tower.
I am just. As you know, Rebecca has been very important in the process of establishing this relationship with the city of Frankfurt regarding our emergency communications tower. The one step we haven't quite done yet is that interlocal agreement with the city of Frankfurt for the space of which that tower will be placed. We did speak with Frankfurt multiple times. They're not interested in selling the property specifically to the county or gifting the property or anything. They would like to maintain the ownership of that property. This lease agreement spells out the relationship between the county and the city regarding that property of which the tower would sit on. The draft agreement is in your packet. The Buildings and Grounds Subcommittee went through this draft agreement, made some suggested changes, which you'll see in red. I'd like to get this relationship in place now, and then have the board refer back to the subcommittee to determine the cost split of any ongoing costs that we're going to have. Some of those are still a bit unknown. We're not sure exactly what the ongoing costs are going to be for electrical and, you know, those sorts of things for the property. But we really should, good business, have this relationship memorialized sooner than later. And so I'm asking today for you to approve that lease agreement between the city and the county for that space with the subcommittee, the Buildings and Grounds Subcommittee, that is, to work with us and Frankfurt to really determine that cost allocation when we have a better idea of what it's truly going to cost.
How do we protect ourselves?
Yeah.
In the event Frankfurt says we want your tower off our property.
So we've mulled over that.
So
Because
there's nothing saying some years down the road.
yeah,
Geography could change, their people in charge could change, and we need to make sure we're protected.
yeah. So that was the biggest reason why we agreed that we wanted to purchase the land specifically, because we wanted to protect ourselves from that. The city of Frankfurt, those today have given us our word that this lease agreement stands. In a lot of ways, we have to trust that. If they decided to remove that tower or not give us access, they're going to have to fight with more than just us. It's going to come down to the state of Michigan and the MPSC system, because once this tower is put on the system, it's then, you know, maintained by that system. So they're going to have a much bigger battle than one would think, because it's not just the county that they're fighting with. Also, this agreement, you'll notice that we extended the termination clause in there. It originally said a shorter 90-day period. Quite frankly, that's just not enough. And so we extended that termination clause too, which would get us through some of that conversation if it ever came to be. This agreement also is an agreement that typically or just standardly renews. And so it would renew for quite some time. And agreements of this nature between municipalities are typically unlikely to be challenged and removed. I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but it's very unlikely in this situation that would happen in the future.
What's the length of the lease as far as, I read it once and there was a lot of things in here that really scare the hell out of me.
Sure. So,
To say the least.
So there's an initial 3-year period with an automatic annual extension to occur through year 2072.
And I thought I read somewhere in there that they can have access to this property,
Property, but not the site.
not the site, without our permission, correct?
For mowing purposes and
Snow
property
plowing.
maintenance.
All right, 'cause
Yeah.
that was kind of, I didn't know exactly why. Right,
So-
so they're gonna maintain,
Yeah, so part of the split conversation has been that, you know, their DPW would maintain the snow plowing and the mowing and those sorts of things that would be factored into the cost split for the ongoing maintenance of it. We did try to make it clear that while they can access the property, they cannot access this leased area. And so that will be a secured area, because quite frankly, no one should be in there without us knowing or the MPSC knowing.
that'll be fenced in,
Yes, yes.
obviously.
Did I say it wrong again?
Yeah, well,
There's a lot of M and S's and C's.
And our legals looked this over.
Our legal has this, their legal has prepared it. They work well together. Our legal from their standpoint, said it looks good so far. I did just present additional changes and tweaks to them, so that's coming forward.
I'm just wondering if our legal can get something a little solider as far as I'm concerned like Bob.
Yeah. I mean, outside of us owning the premises, I can't
That's not gonna happen.
fully secure. They have no interest in gifting or selling it to the county.
Okay.
I would like to make the motion that the Board of Commissioners approves the Emergency Communications Tower Site Lease Agreement with the City of Frankfurt for the initial 3-year period with automated annual extensions to occur until the year 2072, subject to approval as to its form by legal counsel, and authorizes the chair to sign.
Mark, you will support.
There's a motion and support. Is there further discussion?
I just want to address number 7. It's the maintenance and operations ongoing, where it was proposed initially an 80-20 split with Frankfurt. That conversation, it was suggested, is that appropriate? We know this is going to benefit the county as a whole, but primarily Frankfurt is going to enjoy the benefit the most. So should that split be different? 30-70, 60-40?
That's what's in here is 30-70.
It is, but I want to make sure everybody's comfortable with that because this is still a negotiation phase. And if this was going to be adjusted, now is the time to do it before this is set in stone. So that was a conversation at a table. I want to make sure this full board is comfortable with that split.
I would like to have an upfront price on it. Or even got into this.
I'd like to ask the question a little differently. Who's negotiating the lease?
The Buildings and Grounds Subcommittee has been negotiating this with the mayor, their attorney, who's Ross Hammersley.
And can I assume then that this is the outcome of those negotiations?
Yes, but we will be bringing this back, talk about that split further. We first want to get this lease agreement in place to protect the site. That cost, I'm going to bring back. I'm waiting on Ross on a couple more things with the city. And then I'm bringing that back. We're going to schedule an additional Buildings and Grounds Committee. We're also waiting on some cost estimates as to what the overall costs are going to look like so that we can then come to a better percentage if we have to.
Does the motion reflect that?
No, it needs to be adjusted. And that's my miss. It needs to add a statement, if you're okay with it, Karen, to refer the cost allocation back to the subcommittee for final negotiation.
So if the contract really hasn't been fully negotiated, I understand you want to secure that property, but your contract hasn't been fully negotiated based on what you said. Why would I approve this? Why would they want to reopen the contract once it's been approved?
Because we need to secure the property because it's in limbo right now, which is adding to the fear of they're controlling that property right now. We need to get the property control piece in motion. Everybody means well. We have a great relationship with everybody. Obviously, their board hasn't approved this yet. But I would really like to secure the leased premises before we get too much further into this process. And then we can work out the cost sharing piece of it.
Work is being conducted right now on behalf of the county. You just approved like $800,000 for us to move forward. So that is being done on behalf of the county and we have no lease to that property. We're just doing work on it. And I think that that's where we're kind of at. And then she's waiting on me. Mostly I've been reaching out to vendors. Utilities take forever. It seems like to work through. I've been through 3 different work people for consumers, but we're trying to secure some numbers so that when they say 70-30, they know 70-30 of what. And I haven't been able to provide that, not because I haven't been trying, but just because they haven't been providing it to me yet.
I understand that, but if, as the way I'm looking at this, we approved this contract today and they approved the contract. Why would they want to reopen it to negotiate costs?
So if I had to gather at the last Buildings and Grounds Subcommittee, 70-30 was their ask. and it wasn't turned down. They presented 80-20. We asked for 70-30. That's what's in this agreement.
Okay.
70-30 is much more in the county's favor of the cost split. I think if we do anything, I don't know how much further up we would go, but rather down. 70-30 to me seems like a pretty good split in the grand scheme of the county. The Buildings and Grounds Subcommittee, that's the request, that the change that they asked for. And the mayor has agreed to that as much as she can, of course, because it does have to still go to their board. I'm comfortable with 70-30. Honestly, if anything, based on what the cost is going to be, I don't see that if that allocation changes it, I see it going closer back to the 80-20, if anything, maybe.
And I'm putting confidence in the group that's negotiating it. No, I'm not at the table. At a minimum, I could only support this if the motion said, subject to clearer definition of cost sharing.
That's
Because
fine.
right now, I'm gonna repeat myself, if we approve this and they approve it, it's done. Unless they agree to reopen it.
Based on my conversations yesterday with the mayor, that is the intention.
To reopen it?
To finalize the cost allocation, but at least get the lease premises in place. But
I'll
I
wait to hear
think
what the
that-
motion is before
yeah,
I,
I think that motion amendment could be appropriate.
Remember? What she said. No.
Refer the cost allocation back to the subcommittee for negotiation.
Yes.
And or approval.
We can adjust the wording in this lease agreement to say the percentages to be determined and then bring it back. Would that be better? We need to secure
Concerned
this
about the
property. I'm
property.
concerned. We need to secure the property, no matter the cost at this point.
I'm kind of in agreement with that. You're saying that you don't think we're gonna do better than 70-30. They've already agreed to 70-30 to go
Well,
to 70.
the mayor has, the board hasn't approved it, but the mayor,
And
the mayor.
but our
seemed to
building and
agree.
grounds that we're doing the work said 70-30. Well.
That
we're
was
just
their
gonna-
ask from
Exact
80-20.
conversation Was, should this split be 70-30 or 60-40? And she said, I can agree to 70-30 right now without taking it back to her board.
Right. The part of the issue that we're up against, like Rebecca said, is trying to get those rough numbers is very difficult. And it's an unknown. We don't know. We've never put in a tower on our own and had to pay for it.
and I'm not reluctant to approving this. And if you can gain a better position, that's a great deal. But I'm just saying that for the fourth time, if we approve this today, it's, as far as I'm concerned, it's a done deal.
I would say request then that section 7 of the contract, cost allocation percentages be determined at a later date. Or give it a deadline.
It sounds like you can craft it better than I can on the fly. Can you help Tammy with that?
Are we keeping the other amendment or no?
Yeah.
Okay.
Forgive me for not remembering, but does the contract consider future revenue from the site?
Yeah, it notes on that as well. Mhm.
Okay, I didn't remember reading
That's the
that.
same split.
No, if there was revenue, that would pay first, essentially,
Oh,
and then the municipalities would split the
But the
remainder.
remainder,
Correct. Mhm.
okay.
Any revenue pays first.
So I need to ask the question of Commissioner Markey. Because of your second support of the original motion, it's been amended a couple of times. Are you in favor of that as well?
What's the amendments?
Say no. I'm not 100% sure what the amendment is. I understand what the intent is.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm in favor of the intent.
Can I ask one more question? I'm sorry. So if the revenue provides for covering the cost of the tower and then any remainder is 70, so let me say this differently. Revenue is generated on the tower and the costs are paid and the revenue is above the costs that are needed by the tower, that revenue is split 70-30 as well?
Don't remember that. It's
Because I think that's important to know too.
the revenue pays for the utilities. My assumption is that the revenue sits there and continues to pay for the ongoing maintenance.
That
It's
needs
not
to be addressed in
split.
in the contract.
Did you read that differently? No.
So if there is a revenue surplus, we have to know on the front end how that's going to be dealt with.
Yeah, I don't think that that's in there. I think it's just that if the there was a section on revenue, but I don't believe it was
Called out in that
called out
form.
as to actually making money on it.
We don't anticipate making money.
No, you don't, but we don't know what to expect.
Understood.
So.
Yeah,
Yep.
so if it's at the end of the year that it gets put back or something, I'm not sure. Not sure.
So add that to the contract or clarify that in the contract.
So at this point, is it gonna be prudent to have the contract redone before we approve it?
Probably.
At this point, it's probably prudent for me to withdraw my support of the motion.
You could.
There you go.
And with that said, can there be a conversation either now or this afternoon regarding what this board feels like a
Yes.
reasonable split should be? So
Study
when the
session.
Building and Grounds Committee goes in, they have the support and walk in with the knowledge of what this board is asking for.
I don't see why you couldn't do it now as part of this item. If you wanted to.
You know, we can set any standard for ourselves that we want. When you're at the negotiating table, that changes everything. So I would have to default to whoever's doing the negotiating. I'm not gonna handcuff them.
Well, at the end of the day, for the tower itself, that's gonna be owned by the county. So,
Yeah, this is for the cost, the split of the cost of maintenance specifically, but if this board feels strongly that a 60-40 split is where you land, or if that's a hard stop, then that doesn't tie the hands of the committee. It empowers the committee to say, this is where my board stands. But if if you don't feel strongly one way or the other, no, this is the time we should have that discussion.
I'd like to see some parameters. This is what we'd like, this is where we would go to. I think the 60-40 is a good start, 70-30 is probably where we're gonna end up. I don't see that changing, to be honest with you. But never hurts to ask.
But we're in a public meeting. We just established the parameters.
Okay,
I mean, if you say, this is what I want, but this is what I'm willing to take. If I'm on the other side of the negotiations, I already know where you're at. And also, someone's brought up the issue about revenue or revenue sharing, and that's not in this contract. So we really got two big items on here. And I know it's tempting to want to set the terms at this table, but who's actually doing the face-to-face negotiating?
The Buildings and
You
Grounds
are?
Subcommittee.
Building and Ground Subcommittee.
So the three of you.
Hmm.
Yeah. Well, quite frankly, I got to empower you guys to do the best you can for the community.
if we're gonna do anything farther with this, we go into closed session.
I don't see,
That's like-
I'm
I think
with
there's-
Art.
My statement
The-
just made it public.
I'd say you're so far down the road.
Okay.
I gotta agree with Art, let the buildings and grounds do their thing and just bring it back to us.
All right, make a decision then.
Right?
I think we got it.
So what are we doing? We're basically tabling.
Tabling.
We're gonna,
Table it.
we're
Item
gonna
B.
table it. We're gonna add in a section regarding if there's excess revenue. And then we're gonna get back with the mayor and her attorney on the split.
And Katie, if I can offer this, because what I'm hearing is some level of urgency. You
Yeah.
could do potentially a one-page document that just says, our intent is to enter into an agreement with the county and the county with the city to place the tower, terms to be determined. They sign it and that'd probably be defended in court if that's what we're really that concerned about, moving it forward, because you're doing work there now. You see that all the time in real estate transactions. It's
Right.
if things are pending, but they want to tie it up. That's essentially what you want to do, right?
I will bring this back on the 24th.
Very good. Item C. Consider amendment to the current rostered positions.
In your board is a memo, is a memo regarding the roster that's in place now for the next 20 days regarding the jail administrator position, which is a vacant position right now, as well as the recycling coordinator position, which is also a vacant position right now. We have contracted for the recycling coordinator services. As we talked about before, we're in the very beginning stages of a long 3-year materials management planning process, and Benzie County doesn't really know what it needs in the grand scheme of recycling solid waste management. So we've contracted for that position for the next 12 months, so pulling it off the official roster. The jail administrator position also is a vacant position right now. As you know, we are in a pickle with the jail fund as it currently stands. And so this, removing it from the roster, it removes the opportunity to fill that position. In essence, to help save funding in the meantime. The jail fund is quite low on cash. There is about $200,000 to $210,000 in cash total to cover the jail until a November election. If that millage then passes in November, we will have that levy coming in with the winter taxes. If it does not, we will essentially be out of cash. We still have 20 days left of this fiscal year, and then October and a first week in November. $200,000 to $210,000 in cash is not much. And other funds are going to have to support those operations. This is simply preventing the opportunity to fill that position, which then would save money for those last couple of weeks for that position's salary. And this is specific to the current roster.
Are we asking to remove this until after the election?
So to amend this current roster, it removes the position for the remaining of this fiscal year. So as of now until 9/30, the position is not on the roster. So there's no position, it cannot be filled.
But not permanently.
Not
eliminated.
permanently. With the budget discussion, you're then going to be talking about the next roster. And at that time, we can continue the conversation about what do we do longer term for that position as well. Correct. This removes it essentially for the next 20 days.
And what's the benefit of removing it for the next 20 days?
It cleans up bookkeeping and it takes away any opportunity to try to fill those positions so that we're not pigeonholing ourselves from a funding standpoint.
But those positions couldn't be filled without this board approving the funding for it, right?
You've already approved the funding by approving the roster. When you approve that roster, you're committed to funding those positions.
I approve a budget of X amount of dollars. And if they want to work within those dollar constraints, wouldn't that be the department head or the manager's responsibility?
Are you gonna fill that position and then in 20 days fire them? Because there's no money.
Well, I'd be curious to know if the sheriff even intends on filling it in the next 20 days.
If I may, please address.
Can I do one thing really quick? Because I know it'll probably be extended discussion, right? Can I make a motion that the Board of Commissioner amends the 23-24 position roster to remove the solid waste recycling coordinator position? Like split those two up.
Second that.
Well, again, because now we're back in discussions. I'm not clear. Was it your intention to fill that solid waste coordinator position in the next 20 days?
Could have been, but it's not, no.
Yeah, I didn't think so.
Well, I thought we had the reason I did that, I thought we had the contract.
We have a
And
contract.
we'd already talked about not filling it, so. I just wanted to try and
It's
clean up
cleaning up
the
bookkeeping
discussion with the two
as well.
things was all.
Motion and support. Roll call, please.
Markey,
Yes.
Guy,
Yes.
Roloffs,
Yes.
Sauer,
Yes.
Worsakki.
Yes.
Cunningham,
Yes.
Janat,
No,
motion carried.
This will be revisited in 20-some days again too, right?
No,
No.
hold on, we're gonna have the discussion
No,
now
we're
with the
gonna-
jail.
Yes.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Now we're gonna
Position.
talk
Now you're
about
talking
jail
about the other
administrator.
one.
Okay.
I think we have to be clear, don't we, that when the jail millage was asked, we had an increase in there because of the study that provided we need 2 more full-time employees. And so the fact that that jail millage didn't pass and we're now going for a renewal doesn't negate the fact that we still need those 2 employees, right? And so this was a mitigating factor. It's a non-statutory position, the jail administrator, which is often, the duties are often provided for in different ways, in different areas. I'm just saying, even with the renewal, the budget will be tight and cuts will be necessary, right? To
That is-
provide for the 2 new employees.
That is correct. We still have to cut $200,000 to $250,000 from the budget, whether it passes or not. If it doesn't pass, that's a whole different ball of wax, and I don't want to talk about that. But even if it passes, we still have to cut over $200,000. The cost of doing business has increased. You all know that. We need these other line duty staff, I'll call them. For the jail operations specifically, we need those positions according to the study. And yes, in many other small counties, the jail administrator duties are handled by other folks or split up between other folks or such.
And a
Yes.
big chunk of handling this underfunding that we may experience was removal of positions through attrition.
Correct. This
which
position is vacant.
Exactly what happened,
Yes.
correct?
Correct. This position
on
is
that?
vacant. Part of the budget included moving the maintenance coordinator into the general fund to cover some funding there as well. And then other, tighten down in other lines specifically regarding supplies and equipment and things like that. I don't want to fire anybody. None of us want to fire anybody or lay off anybody. That's not our intention, and we don't want to see that happen. So through attrition always seems better. There's nobody there at the time. I just want to be clear that I don't intend for us to never have a jail administrator again. I really don't intend that. But we have to make these hard decisions and we have to really tighten things down and make these ugly changes and cuts to get us through. I'm not lying when I say there's about $210,000 in cash left. That's it. That's it. When do taxes start coming in, Kelly? Even if it passes? We have to somehow make $210,000 last through December.
Hey, Katie, I'm not disagreeing with what we have to do, and I was the first to say that the cuts as a result of the failure of the jail millage need to come from the sheriff's office and from the jail.
Yep.
I mean, that was, the public said that. I didn't say that. What I guess I'm not on board with is these positions one day will have to be reinstated.
Yep.
In all likelihood. We've already said solid waste coordinator is a 1-year contract. So we may be reinstating that in the next year. Same way with jail administrator. And I'm not sure that I'm on the same place with you. If we approve a budget that says we're willing to spend X amount of dollars on payroll, and the sheriff comes back and says, you know what, I'm going to cut a different position so that I can have a jail administrator. As long as you're working within that budget, that's your budget. I'm not saying that I'm willing to give additional monies, but if we're going to reinstate it, why cut it now and then reinstate it later? But I do have a more direct question. I'm curious, how many counties that have jails don't have jail administrators? Well,
I don't know,
a dedicated jail administrator.
I don't know of any.
And Katie, I thought I
I've
heard you
talked to a
say
lot of
something different.
My understanding and the wage info I've received from the MSA when you've sent the spreadsheet is there are small counties who other positions serve in that capacity.
If I could,
Please.
I had, after, our jail administrator retired and knowing the situation, I'm a realist. I know what's going on. I did not intend to, under sheriff and we met with our sergeants. We did not intend on replacing that JA. At least until monies were solid and voters were, our millage was passed and we knew where we were headed. Right now, we're divvying up the duties. There's probably 5 of us doing that job, to be honest with you. Well, we realize it's a short-term deal. I can't stress to you enough how important it is to have a jail administrator. In this operation, we may be the smallest county landmass wise, but we are not the smallest county when it comes to running and operating a first-class jail. We have, MDLC does our yearly inspections, and we are a model jail. And we pride ourselves in that. And I feel like we're going backwards. We've had a jail administrator since 1992 when we opened the new jail. It's not a new thing. I understand the constraints that we have and the realistic approach that we have to make. But knocking out our top echelon is not one of those things. More chain of command means less liability for the county. That's been proven. We fought to get 4 sergeants there. We're down 1 right now. It is my hope to reinstate one of them instead of the jail administrator, until which time we know where we're headed with the passing of our millage, which I'm confident will happen in the fall. We've had a millage. Unlike most counties in the state, Benzie County has had a millage for operations of their jail since its inception. And that's very rare, but we have always had support from our community. Things happened on the last pass through. Everybody has an opinion. The fact of the matter is it failed. So we got to regroup, tighten up our bootstraps and move forward. And that's what I, as the elected sheriff, am hoping to do with your support. I also know, having been here for 35 years, how hard it is to gain employees on a roster that I have no control over after they're off that roster. So I think that you're making a huge mistake by dropping a person or a position, especially at the top, without following through and knowing where we're headed. I think it's premature to do that, and I'm against it. That's my 2 cents.
Appreciate it.
You have any questions?
I do think one of the concerns that at least I have, when Art asked about, you have a budget, you gotta stay within that budget. Over the years, since I've been a county commissioner, the jail has frequently came back to the board asking for more money because they didn't budget properly. Are you gonna be able to stay within your budget and not come back to the board and say, hey, well, now we didn't expect this to happen, so we need another $50,000 for another air moving unit on top of the roof?
As I stated 4 years ago when I got elected, I would try my best to make that happen. Obviously, there are things that happen along the way that are unforeseen circumstances, especially by operating a jail. I think you've all been in your seats long enough to know how it is, how ever changing that system is up there, especially with our mental health situations that we have today. Our hospitalization is through the roof, and those are things that we can try to budget for, but it's literally a shot in the dark. It's a crapshoot, and we really, it's something that you can't really predict. But to answer your question, yes, I fully intend to stay within our budget. And I'd like to remind you that even though we've been operating with millages in the past, there have been times when the county has kicked in on top of that through the general fund to make up those shortfalls or to add programs or things that were necessary at the time. So we've had a great relationship with the county board always in this endeavor and working through these problems. I don't see that changing. I really don't. I think that we can all come to the table and figure this out because it's at the end of the day, it falls upon my shoulders as the leader up there. But as leaders of our community and the county, we all have to work together to make sure that we live within our means and we take care of our people and our citizens and our inmate population. So there's already things that are suffering because of the current constraints. GED, things like that. We may have to stop some of the other programs, and that's not fair to the population that's up there. Their punishment is being there, not things added to make it worse for them. So we're trying to make their stay and take care of their needs as we're supposed to by law. So
Well, up until just a couple of years ago, we were funding the sheriff and jail out of the general fund to the tune of about $400,000. And then we got a slight increase that helped cover some of that gap. The administrators already identified that we're gonna have to come up with a $250,000 somewhere. Part of it's gonna be through reduction of programs. And I understand what you're saying about the programs to the inmates. I feel bad about that too, but the voters spoke. And they said, I'm gonna give you X amount of dollars. That's it, live within it. And I intend as a board member to follow that direction. But Tim, to your comment, most of the time when they come to us, it's a capital need that they're asking for. And our administrator's done a great job of having a 5-year plan, and we move stuff around within that, so we stay within that capital plan. So some of those things just couldn't be predicted, but those weren't operating expenses. Those were capital improvements, to the best of my knowledge.
I'll just remind too that you committed to the public to fully fund the operations with a millage, to not borrow from the general fund. I can appreciate the relationship and it happened for many years, but when you went to the voters the last time, you said, we're not borrowing from the general fund in these situations. So keep that in mind as well. Typically, yes, it was capital, the reasons that have had to come forward. And like the sheriff said, you can't always predict all of those things. But there's a lot of budget adjustments that go on in the background that are not required to come to this board. I don't want to point fingers, but this is the hardest fund to balance every year. It is. It's the hardest one to balance every year. We're pulling pennies from lines to balance this budget every year.
And Katie, what percentage of our total budget is this?
This budget is 2.3 million this year, projected to 2.5 next year. Our general fund budget is just over 9 million.
Okay.
This is in line with like EMS as well. EMS is around the $2 million mark as well.
And could I please remind you folks that our personnel, we talked about that MDOC and having 16 officers. We made that adjustment and we were hoping for a slight increase to cover that. And that slight increase in the millage got voted down. So now we're back to square one with the original budget, or I'm sorry, millage request, but still expected to fill that gap. So
Because the cost of doing business.
I have no idea how that's ever going to happen.
And it just may not, but again, I'll say it for the third time, the voters spoke.
Yeah.
I guess with the argument that you just made, how does it behoove us to keep this jail administrator position on the roster? I mean, it just, to me, sends a message to the voters that you spoke, we're responding. If the climate changes and the fiscal climate changes, we can respond to that. This board has been more than willing to make changes in staff and the configuration of the staff. And we're very open to hearing practical adjustments is what I've seen happen. But right now, difficult decisions have to be made because that millage did not pass. And you're right, the costs are not balanced if the renewal goes through. We still have issues to deal with. So Katie, does this decision give you an insurance policy that we're better equipped to move forward if the renewal does pass, or,
What I've presented you is a balanced budget within the renewed millage, if it passes. That balanced budget accounts for the position not being active in the jail fund, as well as the maintenance coordinator position coming into the general fund to also offset those costs, as well as various other lines that have been tightened down, which we talked about last time, one being the GED program and some other equipments and supply needs, tightening up those lines a little bit. That is what I've presented you.
What I'm hearing is, once we approve our new budget, the intent was not to have this position anyway.
Yes. Unless you bring it back and amend the roster and allow for the position, but you got to find the money to do that.
So basically, this is just removing that position, what, 30 days or 20 days ahead of time?
So yeah, you have two actions in front of you today. One is to amend the current budget or current roster, and then to consider the adoption of the overall budget. And that roster would also not include this position or the solid waste and recycling position either, unless you choose to add it back in. You can amend the budget later or amend the roster later, just like we're proposing today to amend the roster. If we are in a financial situation to bring that position back on, we will bring that roster forward to amend that roster to add that position if the financial means are there to do so.
Guess where my confusion lies is that removing of the position itself doesn't change our budget situation. It just says that position is no longer available. And I'm going to go back to what I said earlier. We're going to approve X amount of dollars in the budget. You can't spend beyond that. I'm a firm believer that the sheriff's office ought to spend their budget the way you want, but don't come back to me. Spend it the way you want.
But if you take away a position from the roster, I have to come back to you and beg for that back. That's how it works.
Position itself, but
Yeah.
removal of the position itself doesn't change our budget. It just changes what positions are available.
And while operating all that time without a jail administrator, I have 3 pages of the duties that are required of that person to do the job up there. So that's my problem. I understand that. Figuring out how to do the job and be effective and reduce the liability in the county while keeping order up there. It's going to be tough, but obviously the ball's in your court. So.
Well, you face the same decisions we do on other funding needs. We make the tough decisions, and because we don't, right this year, we may have the money we need for everything except for the jail, but that doesn't mean 2 years from now we will. And it was certainly in recent years, we've had to make some cuts.
I truly think that I should have some say in where those cuts are made, whether it's the lower people that we've just hired that, maybe we can reconfigure things, or the top. That should be up to me. It won't be if the roster doesn't say that there's a spot, so.
To get one thing clear, from what I understand what the sheriff said, he will not fill that position until money's available. Okay, and that right?
That is my intention, sir.
And money's not going to. When is the money going to be available? Are you assuming that if the millage passes in November, that the money is available then? Or is it going to be when we get the?
What?
So what I'm getting at is right now, we already know that from what originally was proposed, had the millage passed in August, we're now about 200 and some odd $1,000 less from that original budget process.
My thought process is to, once the millage passes, sit down with Katie, my staff, and really do a deep dive into how we can make what the voters have chosen, how we can make that work up there and give everybody an opportunity to do the right thing. That's I fully intend to do that. I'm not pulling any punches.
Sheriff, hasn't it already been done though? Isn't that how we got to this conclusion? That the maintenance person had to go into the general fund and we needed to remove positions by attrition and the programs needed to be cut? Isn't
In
that
some
what we
regards,
happened?
yes. But I think there's more that can be done. I think there's other ways we can make it work. My request to you, obviously, you know, I'm against the roster thing, but my request is that you table any changes in the roster until after the November 5th election. And then we know where we're at. What, we have a better understanding of what we can do to make this work. That's all I'm asking.
And you mean changes in the roster as it relates to your area of responsibility?
Correct. Just the sheriff's office.
Could that position be suspended till funding becomes available, or is that out of our realm?
That's pretty much what the sheriff is saying, suspend it until after the election and then see what, if there's money.
Suspend the change is what I'm asking.
Right.
Don't take that position out.
There won't be funding though. We still have to cut $200,000 to $250,000, even if it passes November 5th. For 2 fiscal years, it was brought to this board that we needed a second sergeant for liability reasons and for the staffing per the MDOC. For 2 years, we heard that same argument. Now we're hearing this same argument. And in the DOC staffing analysis, the jail administrator isn't included in that 16. The 16 is the 4 sergeants and the 12 corrections men and women. The jail administrator is on top of that. Historically,
Right.
the jail administrator has not really worked the floor to fill in on that at all. And then we've had issues with overtime and other things happening. It's vacant now. It doesn't affect the staffing recommendation as the MDOC. Like I said, I believe it's temporary. We're meeting then the recommendation of the MDOC as requested by this board. No matter what, we have to cut $200,000 to $250,000. It's a matter of how do we get there? Moving the maintenance coordinator into the general fund only accounts for 60-ish thousand. GED program only accounts for 10,000-ish, 10 to 12,000. And a corrections is not going to make up the jail administrator position accounts for at least $100,000. That's a big hit.
In that maintenance position, really, we aren't saving anything. We're just shifting the
We're
cost.
just shifting the cost to the general fund.
Right.
It's all public money, no matter how you look at it.
I get that, but we have so many special millages. I'm assuming this is what the public wants. When they vote on a special millage or fail to vote in favor of it, that's their decision. Well, I'm going to suggest that there's no motion, it dies for lack of motion.
If it stays on the roster, can that position be filled if there's no funding?
Well, as of today, you've funded that position through the end of the fiscal year, so yes. But if there's no funding after that, you're either committed to finding the funding or firing a person.
And the sheriff has just got done telling us that he's not intending on filling that position.
I think if I'm a man of my word, y'all know that. That could potentially be a cut we make in the future, but
So my understanding is our intent already is anyway to remove that position with our new budget.
That's the next conversation, but that's how it's presented. This is simply this roster. I think we're kind of muddying it a little bit.
Well, I'm saying, so, but the budget takes effect when,
10-1.
yeah, so 20 days from now, 21 days from now?
You can,
that's,
can't you have a position on a roster, but it doesn't get funded?
Well, so
When
what
you,
I'm struggling with is the Department of Corrections is saying that we should have this staff, right? To make it safe for our corrections officer
And our inmate.
and our inmates. correct?
President,
And our intent is to try to follow the Department of Corrections recommendations. Now, it's not all, you have to do it. This is what we're recommending. Two different things. And our intent is, as of right now, the way the budget's being presented is not to have the jail administrator on the roster starting October 1. What Katie's suggesting we do is if we remove that position today, it makes it just so that roster position cannot be filled between now and December 1st. They're saying, well, he wants to keep it. I'm hearing he wants to keep it beyond October 1. Otherwise, why would he care if we removed it today? It's going to be removed October 1 anyway, with no intention of filling it. Is that correct?
I want the ability to make the choice
Between now and October 1st?
from now till the day I leave.
So your ask is not just for now, but you also want us to adjust our budget.
No, that's not what I'm asking. I'm asking you give me an opportunity to adjust the budget to fulfill all of our obligations and make that jail make decisions up there that will be the best for all involved. I understand the constraints of the money. I don't believe that with the current millage, we can fulfill the MDLC's recommendations.
So without
Oh.
understanding your business really at all.
But that's something we need to dive into.
I mean, potentially you could come back and again, managing your area, you could come back and say the duties of the administrator is changing now. And they're going to spend more time on the floor if that's what it's called. But, you know, I can't say this enough. That's, as far as I'm concerned, that's up to you to decide how to manage it. It's not for me.
Is it fair to say also if we remove this administrator position off the roster, couldn't those duties be assigned to new hires or the administrative staff?
That's what I'm doing right now. And it's causing a hardship. The sergeants that are working in the jail have to do their daily obligations and things I'm asking them to do on top of that, which we all know that trying to keep employees is difficult these days. And so it's a balance. It's a balance of, you know, are we over making them do too much so that to where they're gonna, I can go somewhere else and just put in my 8 and skate or whatever it is. We do have some very dedicated people up there. And I appreciate them every day, but I don't know that we can sustain it for forever.
But as a board who has fiscal decisions to make, you're asking us to leave a position on that we can't fund in the foreseeable future.
As you see the funding mechanism.
yes, or you're asking the board to not follow the recommendation of the MDOC as the alternative,
That's not what I'm asking.
but you can't.
I'd
have
like to
both.
follow MDOC, have the millage pay for as much as it can, obviously. Maybe the JA gets paid out of the general fund on top of that. Because then they're very necessary into our operation.
I want to go on record saying that would be a no vote for me. If it's got to come out of the general fund, it's not going to happen. The millage was set by the voters. But I am in favor of leaving it on the roster.
Thank you.
The current roster. We haven't got to the next conversation.
Yeah.
Please clarify.
Oh, whatever roster we're talking about this moment.
I know, it's hard.
So what would you like next?
It's up to you. You can move on. You can try to vote. That's your option. That's- We can move on to the budget discussion, which would involve the next roster and other things. Or you could try to vote on this if anyone is willing to make any sort of motion. It's up to you.
I want to accommodate the sheriff in his request. I just don't know where
If you simply move on and take no action, it stays on the current roster and it's there for the next 20 days.
Unfortunately,
No
with no
changes.
funding, but it's there.
well, then Katie, no, never mind.
Moving on, it just keeps it as it is.
I suggest we move forward at this point in time. Item D, discussion regarding funding request in consideration of adapting the L 4029 general appropriations and related budget documents.
In your packet, I provided the necessary documents outside of the budget documents specifically that were distributed to all of you via email, the website, and hard copy. What is in the packet is the general appropriations, the appendices that would be part of the budget book. The general appropriations looks a little different because I filled in the yellow blanks from last time. You'll notice that in the General Appropriations Act document, it has the different levies that are being proposed for the various millages that are active. You'll also see in here the L 4029, which is the official document which sets those different levies. The appendices are in there. A is the elected officials appendices. B is appointed officials, and C is the mileage report. We adopt that every year as well. Appendix A, elected officials. That is this board as well as the elected offices. I do want to note that the probate district court judge salary is established by the state. We've received some feedback of, wow, you can really pay him a lot of money. It's unfortunate, but we don't determine that salary. That's set by the state, and we are reimbursed by the state for that salary as well. So just to clear up that misnomer, we are paying him, but the state is reimbursing us for the majority of that salary. They determine their increases. The state has set that the judges are getting a 5% increase this year. So that's why that salary is the way it is. The other ones that have asterisks include longevity. We still have a few folks here receiving longevity. But as you know, for folks after 2011, there's no longevity in place. Appendix B is the appointed officials. And then C, like I said, is that. And then there's the roster being presented in there as well. And then the L 4029, which will set the levy. In my memo, I talked about additional requests that were made as part of this budget season. And so what's in front of you today is to talk about that, their different requests, talk about the budget. If there's any questions, we had a public hearing, there was no public comment, and then consider adopting the budget to be effective 10/1. I've given you a balanced budget in all funds. It's also on the website, a link's in the packet as well for the community to see.
Katie, those specific requests that you've outlined in your memo, Grow Benzie,
Mm-hmm,
the parks, the IT person,
mm-hmm.
are those monies put into a contingency fund or are they specifically named in the budget?
So the IT position is in the general fund. The wage discussion was an earmarked contingency, so it is in the contingency fund. The parks position and or EDC community type position, as well as Grow Benzie, are not earmarked in the funds at all. But they were additional requests that had come before you. If you want to fund any of those additional funds, you'll need to direct me today to make those changes in the budget to do that. And that goes for any changes or funding or anything like that. Any changes from the budget that was presented, please direct me to make those changes.
So just for my own clarification, the items that we're talking about, there's been no allowances made for them at all, appropriations made for them, that would have to be in addition to the proposed budget.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, to move this thing forward, and make the motion that the Board of Commissioners adopts the 2024-2025 General Appropriations Act, the 2024-2025 fiscal year budget, and authorizes the chair to sign General Appropriations Act and L 4029.
Is there support?
Jeanette will support for discussion. Does this motion then include the roster too? Is that it?
Mhm.
Okay.
It includes everything in the packet aside from the numbers pages. I mean, it includes them, it's just not in the packet.
Okay, there's a motion and support. Is there any further discussion? Roll call.
Yeah, so there were a lot of discussions about specific positions that weren't at median. We had some of the judges' staff
Mhm.
come forward requesting adjustments there.
Mhm.
So all those considerations have been put into contingency for discussion at a later date. Do
Mhm.
I understand that correctly?
Yes, in the contingency, I earmarked $50,000 for wage evaluation. So similar to what we did last fiscal year, we earmarked those funds to then have a deep dive into those positions later. And so that's what I've done in this position as well, in this budget as well. I reached out to the different counties for the court wages, and I haven't heard back from all of them yet. I have to follow up again. So I don't have all that data just yet. And I do believe that this board wanted to take a deeper dive into those to really evaluate what's median, what's not. So that does not include any of those wage increases, including the ones that were presented by the 3 elected officials that are in this room. That's earmarked into contingency unless the board wants me to adjust those specific positions that were called out by the clerk, the register, and the treasurer. The statute says you can't lower an elected official's salary in their term, you can raise it. So we're not setting ourselves up that we can't change the salary once it's adopted in here. That's not an issue. You just can't lower is what the statute indicates.
I think there was only one of them that didn't fall above median.
I'd have to pull the documents back
But-
up.
and I'm comfortable with the money being there and the discussion being possible at a later date. The airport authority, I had a question about that. Our appropriation, I know they asked for an increase of $3,000.
That's
I
correct.
believe that was incorporated into the budget.
Yep.
Will that be issued without further discussion?
Typically it is, yes.
My concern, and I don't know if any other board members share this concern, is I don't think that we are completely comfortable with where we stand in our arrangement with the airport authority and how that's, and to me, perhaps an increase in our funding comes after we resolve those issues instead of beforehand.
Sure.
I offer that.
Maybe the county treasurer wants to fill in what's been transpiring with the airport authority since then. Changes are being implemented for them to take on a lot of the responsibility that the county has been handling.
So at the board meeting this month, we are going to have a discussion on the current manager taking over probably 95% of the bookkeeping that I'm doing now. The only thing I will keep will be helping them with some investments and probably some bank reconciliations. So the talk is that starting in October, that I will start training the current manager to take over all the stuff I've done for them. And then we won't have that responsibility on our plate going forward. Payroll will go away as well. Jackie won't have to do their payroll anymore. That won't go away till January 1st, though. We're gonna round it out as a calendar year thing.
Piggybacking off this discussion, my bigger concern is making sure that the liaison has an appropriate voice at the table. Until I see something come through, I would not be supporting an increase.
I followed up with Tim Perone just late last week on that MOU, because as you know, we asked him to start working through that document. I've heard some unfortunate feedback that one of the partners in the relationship may not be willing to sign that document. I would be comfortable with moving that $3,000 out of the transfer to airport line and putting it into contingency and earmarking it. So that when we can come to a final decision as to the players and those sorts of things, we could allocate that additional funding, kind of like what we did with, I believe, the health department a couple of years ago, where we held back and then later released those funds when certain things were met.
Well, should we,
I think that would be appropriate.
should we adjust the motion then to make it with what the motion was, but with the addition of holding back the increase, the airport authority until we're satisfied with our agreement?
That may be appropriate, but there might be other line items in there that still need discussion.
The airport authority?
No, that we're agreeing that the airport authority, the additional funding is going to go back into contingency for later discussion. Rhonda had outlined some other things. Some of them, it sounded like we're going to be in contingency for later discussion. Were any of those baked into the budget, though? Your concerns?
They're already
Um,
baked into contingency, the wage ones.
Okay, so some of those are, we're going to have another bite at the apple, so to speak.
That's correct.
Okay.
And the EDC, we're approving a significant budget for them. Is it, it's appropriate to I understand correctly that the portion of the 90,000 that's going to the EDC that's not allocated for Mitch Shapiro would have to become before this board again for approval to be expended.
That is correct.
Katie, I think Art already asked us, maybe I misunderstood it. The ask from Grow Benzie and then the extra person for Parks and Rec, that is in the budget?
It is
Or is
not.
not? Okay.
Well, you said it could, was it in contingency?
No, it could be if you direct me to do that, but as of now, there's no note to earmark funding for either of those things. But I added it to the motion, so at least it's brought up and considered.
And I wonder if there'd be any consideration to taking the roster out of this motion and dealing with that separately.
You could.
Well, there's a motion with support already on the table.
Or are you asking to change the motion?
Well, you're already going to have to anyway, or something has to change because of some comments that are made here. But yes, I'm asking that the roster be voted on separately. Right now, it's included in your motion.
Well. You're asking me to withdraw my motion? Which
Well, that's a cleaner way to do it.
I will do that if that makes you happy.
Well, I'm just a happy guy anyway.
Okay.
You're gonna withdraw your support?
Yep.
Okay.
So the question with the roster though. If we're gonna do the roster separately, doesn't that have the potential to adjust the budget, Katie?
Right now, the budget is presented with the roster as presented.
But you can leave those positions on the roster without them being funded, or
No, you can't. I
yes,
don't
you
think you
can.
If you approve that roster, you've committed to funding those positions on that roster.
Within the budget that's presented.
Mm-hmm.
So you can't approve the budget and then have the roster be different after.
The budget presented is based on the roster presented. So tweaks to that should be accounted for in the budget.
All right, well, could we act on the roster first then?
It was much cleaner before the chart of accounts. The chart of accounts used to give a line for all the different positions. So it made things a little cleaner in this budgeting process. With the change in the chart of accounts, it lumped everything together. And so it makes it a little messier.
All right. I'm a little uncomfortable with where we left things. I respect the sheriff greatly and what he's trying to do with, hoping that there's gonna be money down the road. But in my position, as I see it, this position of jail administrator, as it impacts the budget, the money's not there. And it's not going to be there with a renewal, hoping the renewal passes. I'm gonna make the motion right now. We'll see where it falls, that, we remove the jail administrator from the current roster.
And leave the rest of them in there?
Leave the rest of them in there.
So that'd be the solid wasting coordinator also then?
No, we already voted on
You
did
acted
that.
separately on
Well,
that.
no, you voted on it. Okay.
Yeah, you
So
acted.
that carried over to this.
Yes,
Okay, all right.
sorry.
Support.
Motion and support. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Nye,
Yes.
Roloff.
Yes.
Sauer. Worsakki,
Yes.
Cunningham,
Yes.
Janat,
No.
Markey,
Yes.
motion carried.
And I'm going to suggest we take a short break and be back in 10 minutes.
You're unmuted.
All right, we're back in session. Item E, release of funds.
Oh,
Hold on.
No,
We
no,
haven't
no.
passed the,
we haven't actually adopted the budget yet.
I'm sorry.
When we
I'd keep.
still have the motion to remove jail administrator from current roster. Oh, no, we didn't do.
No, that
Sorry.
approved. That
I'm
was
sorry.
changed.
Didn't confuse.
Sorry.
Okay,
There was a motion though regarding the budget that wasn't voted on.
no, we were,
Or did you rescind
wrong.
that one?
Hmm?
See, I'm confused.
Yeah, Tammy, keep scores.
Need another notebook.
More paper.
We didn't vote on the 4029 yet.
Oh,
We're
okay.
back on the discussion regarding funding request and consideration of adopting the L 4029 general appropriations and related budget documents.
We had to add something going into contingency. Contingency.
Port Authority.
Yep, and I
That's what-
made that note, but it should be part of your motion.
So I'll make a motion, the Board of Commissioners adopts the 24-25 General Appropriations Act and the 24-25 fiscal year budget, and authorizes the chair to sign the General Appropriations Act and L 4029 with the change of moving the air
Moving $3,000
$3,000
from the transfer to airport
into
fund into
contingency.
contingency.
support.
Thank you. Motion and support. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Roloffs,
Yes.
Sauer,
Yes.
Worsakki,
Yes.
Cunningham,
Yes,
Janat,
I need clarification. We didn't vote it. Is this includes the roster, everything, right? No,
Everything that's in the packet.
no.
Markey,
Yes.
Nye,
yes.
motion carried.
No, we just approved the roster
You approved the current.
for that.
No, we proved removing the,
What vote did we take before we went for a
to
break?
remove the jail administrator from the current roster.
So we dealt with that separately.
Yes.
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 Okay.
Okay, we're on to E. Release of funds to the Maples capital project.
As we've talked about, the last few meetings, we've been waiting on the Maples to provide us the expenditures related to capital needs for the old building. They have provided that to us and I've included that in your packet. They've accounted for expenditures exceeding what is allotted under the MOU between the county and the Maples. And so I am recommending that we approve payment in $225,000 to the Maples for the capital expenditures that are outlined within your packet.
With that, I'll make the motion that the Board of Commissioners approve payment in the amount of $225,000 to the Maples for capital expenditures in accordance with the document of understanding dated October 26, 2021.
Janat supports.
Motion and support. Any further discussion? Roll call.
Sauers,
Yes.
Worsakki,
Yes.
Cunningham,
Yes,
Janat,
Yes.
Markey,
Yes.
Nye,
yes.
Roloffs,
Yes.
motion carried.
Let's to commissioner reports. So a handful of meetings since our last get together, contract negotiations. I believe with 3 different units, and still ongoing. Area Agency on Aging. There was some closed session involved in that I cannot comment on. Veterans Affairs yesterday, unfortunately, my wife had a commitment that I had to join her with, so I rescheduled that until 1 p.m. So yesterday we did meet at 1 p.m. Main topic primarily was the upcoming Benzie Central Frankfurt Panthers football game, salute to services. We're looking forward to that. I've been in contact with the folks in Frankfurt quite a few times lately. I think we have everything ironed out and who's going to be responsible for what. That's Friday at 7:15, I think the game starts, but if you want to be on the field with a flag, be there around 6 o'clock. There will be a luncheon, starting at 5:30 for anybody that wants to partake. And then we will take the field at approximately 6:15, I believe, 6:10, 6:15. And meet and greet at the baseball field, and then we'll take the field to the football field from there. So. And I would entertain any questions if need be. If not, Commissioner Jeanette.
The Leelanau Health, Pennsy Leelanau Health Department report, Harry, I'm gonna defer to you on that when when you give your report. At the Platte Township meeting, the most notable item to report there is that they would like to get on a regular basis reports from the building department of the permits that are issued for each section. We've made that effort before, Katie, and it would happen for a while and then it would go away. Anything you can do to encourage that to happen, they just need to send it electronically. They're not asking for anything more. At Lake Township, they are looking to fill a position for managing their technology, and the ballot initiative to renew their fire millage did not get put on the ballot in time. And so they are going to have to wait till another date when they can put that on, which means that they'll have to fund it out of the general fund. That kind of feels familiar, doesn't it, folks? My heart goes out to them, but they do have plenty of money to do that at this moment. They may want to be here to dispute that, but they do. The legislative committee for MAC, we had a discussion regarding rules for the property transfer tax. If maybe you want to speak to that, do you know what I'm referring to, either one of you? The rules are changing for the collection of the property transfer taxes. This is mostly for you guys, just to put you on alert to that. I didn't, we didn't dive into that real deeply. And I have asked them to give me some feedback on being able to limit the amount of properties that are exempt from the tax rolls by county. When I brought that up, suddenly a lot of counties north of Grand Rapids said, yeah, I'd like to know that answer too. So Katie, I know that you're looking into that at a later date, right?
I actually have it. I just need to forward you the opinion.
Okay, I appreciate it.
Mhm.
At the Inland Township meeting, Brian McAllister, who's the owner of the Hofbrau in Interlaken, has purchased Richie's Restaurant, which is on 31 near 69, and he's applying for a liquor license. There's quite a bit of land there. It didn't sound like he was going to expand the business model right now, but he and his family have purchased that. And the township is beginning the process to update or document their policies. I suppose that there might be a lot of townships that are in that role, but I'm glad to see that they're starting that. As this group knows, not many years ago, we began that process here. Our administrator and her staff's doing a great job. So it's kind of a proud moment when I can say, you know, we're already well down the road on that, instead of saying, no, we should do that too. And their meetings are currently being live streamed. And between the last meeting and now, there's just been a lot of conversations about housing and the NLC and annexation. Nothing worth diving into. That's the
Questions?
extent of my report.
Questions for Art? Karen?
Thank you. I just want to give kudos on this. The information that we have been passing out to our townships and everything. This has been very, very well received. And I have received several personal comments and also positive staff comments about building communication and trust through these documents. So that's good to hear for us, and hopefully the rest of you are hearing that from your constituents too, and your townships that you're at. The only thing I wanted to mention, I have a written report, but the Benzie Human Services Collaborative is finalizing their sheet that is information of services. It's going to be very, very simple. It will have things like childcare and maybe 2 or 3 items on it. They're finalizing this and it will be posted. Robenzi oversees their website and will be posting it. The information that is on there for childcare, housing, any kind of services we have are given to all those agencies that are participating services. So when they get a phone call asking a specific question, that person can say, you need to go to this. So it's that open and connected communication with all the services for the clients who are looking for it. They're working on the final version of that. Will be like a front and back sheet that can be handed out in hard copy or go to the link on the website. So I have the link there. The airport did have a special meeting to approve their new legal counsel, and I have that mentioned, the Micah Meyer, and it's a firm that has airport-specific experience, but also the attorney is local and in Empire, so they're very happy about that they have personal access. And other than that, you covered everything for our Lake Township. They get double commissioners there, which is really nice for them. And then we'll be attending the conference, the MAC conference near the end of the month. So other than that, meetings and communication with legislatures, Roth and Kofia, and then many constituents. A thing of interest that I don't have on my report is the library in Frankfurt is putting together a local, like, civic awareness and government, what government does, and they're working on that, and I'll give you more information on that, but you'll probably be able to get that through the library too. It's been done in other communities to help educate the public about what government does in various capacities. What does a commissioner do? And then that type of information. So I applaud,
Let me know.
I applaud them for reaching out. They're not inventing this. They're using something that is already working in other communities, but I thought bringing it to Benzie County will help grow people that will be in governmental jobs and help them understand. So unless there's some questions. Or
Here,
comments.
just a comment if I could.
Yes,
You talked about the legal counsel at the airport authority.
yes,
Prior to that, they'd been using Dick Figuera.
yes.
So what happened is Dick retires, Tim goes to work for Micah Myra.
Ah.
And that's how they essentially kept the same person. He's just working for someone else other than himself now.
I'll say so good continuity.
I think it's good, gives them deeper bench strength.
There you go. Thank you.
All righty, moving on. Rhonda?
Thank you. I attended the Central Wellness Executive Committee meeting. We reviewed the agenda. There is a settlement in the state of Michigan. It's called the Wasco settlement. That's in Washtenaw County, CMH. It's going to have impact on CMHs statewide. That was discussed. We talked about the opioid overdose awareness day. I attended the land bank. We reviewed the property inventory. There are 2 interested parties in the lots in Thompsonville on Judson Avenue. 7440 River Street. That's the one where the house is owned by the land bank and the land is owned by Homestretch. Homestretch has accepted offer of $15,000 for the land. So the land bank is purchasing the land. They'll put the 2 together and then either remediate and sell or sell with a condition that remediation will occur within 2 years. The blight elimination grant round 1 closeout is September 20th for reimbursement. Susan Wenslick said that timeline is very motivating to get the paperwork in for the monies that we'll be getting back. And then the Thompsonville Land Bank tour was discussed and scheduled. I believe you all received an email from Katie about that. It's gonna be a tour around Thompsonville to see how the land bank has grown that area, and then dinner at Geno's afterwards. I also attend the Village of Benzonia. Last night, there's a community group that was formed. They're up to 114 people, and it's an outreach on physical activity. They approached the village last night to offer assistance to upgrade their upgrade and add pickleball courts in the village. They're very enthusiastic and very active. And I think they're gonna do a lot of good for the community. The Japanese knotweed keeps coming up as a topic. The village has established an invasive species management plan. They became aware that their tree service, the people who remove the dead ash out of their easements, are allowed to treat the Japanese knotweeds. So they entered into an agreement with them to remove and burn the knotweed and then treat the roots. This is gonna have to be done for 5 consecutive years to fully combat, but the village guys have done an inventory of the village. They know where this stuff is and entered a contract to treat it. And then finally, I attended a community meeting with a representative from Senator Gary Peters' office to provide information about the sewer treatment plant and request financial assistance. This meeting was organized by some residents in the village of Beulah, and really appreciate the representation from our senator showing up and listening. That's all I have.
Questions for Rhonda?
Just a statement, when you bring up pickleball, we have that in Frankfurt too. The court is working towards being done, and the enthusiasts there too. It is going to be beautiful in Market Park.
The fastest growing nationwide recreational activity.
It's like racquetball
It
was.
is.
when-
And second,
I
it
want
is
to
disc
see
golf.
babies on
It's
TV.
really-
Yeah. Anyways, so
Good.
thank
I was
you.
just gonna
I think-
comment that that must be about 25% of Beulah's population that's signed up for fitness.
They are active all over. They
Yes,
talked
they
about
are.
using the courts at the Downs and down
Yep.
at Beulah and over in Frankfurt,
Yep.
and they are just really,
And they raise a lot of the
They
money
do.
themselves.
and they offer their volunteers to
Yep.
assist with the labor to mitigate costs for the communities.
Yeah.
So I was very
I've
impressed.
been watching this.
And Ron, if you would, you were talking about a housing development and the land bank, and where was that location again? What were you talking about?
It's 7440 River Street. There was a house that was built a long time ago by Homestretch. And it was an arrangement where the land remained owned by Homestretch and the home was personal property. And it became filled with mold and abandoned. And so eventually the land bank decided to purchase it for a very minimal sum from the owner who relinquished the home. Title was cleared. The land bank made sure all those steps were taken. And now the land bank is taking on attaching the land back to the house. So it goes back on the tax rolls as real estate, not personal property. And they will put an RFP out to either remediate the home and sell it, or they will sell the home with the condition that the purchasers remediate it within 2 years.
Thank you.
What city is that in?
Thompsonville.
Bill.
You said River?
Benzonia, it's in Benzonia.
Oh, sorry.
Oh,
I was looking up, to see what was that.
You wouldn't know it driving by it. You wouldn't know the condition of the inside. I can show you pictures of the interior on our break. You won't believe it.
I think Shelley showed me some of those pictures a while back. Yeah, it was unbelievable.
Alrighty. Tim?
Union negotiations, those are always a lot of fun. Gender review, and at the Northern Michigan Regional Entity Substance Use Disorder Oversight Committee meeting. Couple things of note there. It was discussed that at the region level, the SAPT block grant funding, which is Substance Abuse Prevention and Treatment. This is like above and beyond the Healthy Michigan and the Medicaid stuff. It's completely spent for this fiscal year already, as of June 30th. So what the region's gonna have to do is use the PA2 funding to supplement that. And that's by statute that they have to do that. And I see your question, but they actually did an analysis of all the counties, all 21 counties in the region. And all the counties are fine because they actually years ago set in a policy that each county has to have at least 1 year of receivables and contingency to help for situations like this. And every county has that. We've been, so, to put things in perspective, as of June 30th, Benzie County's balance was 248,000. Put that in perspective, our 1 year receivables is only 60,000. So we have a very healthy fund balance, and I've been actually pushing different organizations to start using those funds, because if they're going to sit there, at one point, somebody's going to look at it and say, well, we can use these funds over here. We'll just divert. There were no new grant requests this cycle that involved Benzie County. On the Village of Honor, on the council meeting, they had a special meeting on creating a corridor improvement authority. Kind of like a DDA, but they have different taxing limitations. Basically, they can't tax everybody to do it. They are just in the discovery and discussion phase at this time. Their Bailey Park Playground update, their fundraiser over the summer raised $28,000. They needed 25 to get a matching grant. So they got a matching grant as well. That they have 34,000 that the village committed from their ARPA dollars. Gives them about $87,000. They got 3 quotes for just one big piece of equipment from different playground places. And they're all about $97,000 to $100,000. One of the companies is willing to give them a $40,000 grant if they go through them. So they probably will do that and on their next meeting, approve that and hope to have installation starting in the spring. And they're going to continue to do some fundraising because they do want to get the ground done too, like with one of those rubberized ground things. They do plan on adding more pieces of equipment too. So. Okay.
Questions for Tim?
And is there a status on that Dollar General? Right there? No, Dollar General.
Why you ask?
Well,
Dried up.
because I was in a conversation recently that was discussing it, and I wasn't sure they had all good information.
I've heard nothing has changed since the last update that I've known about. That it's just on pause. It's not moving forward and it's not canceled either.
Okay.
They're still working with the environmental issues. I do suspect those will be addressed and they will move forward.
Okay, thank you.
Evan?
Thank you. First, Art, thanks for filling in for me at Inland Township, or sorry that you filled in for me there. Only meeting I had was the executive committee meeting for Benzie Bus, and that we discussed the evaluation of the executive director and everything. She's doing a great job. She got a very high marks and all I have. And the next Benzie Bus meeting is Tuesday, right?
Questions?
Regarding the Transportation Authority.
Yes.
Rumor has it that they gave substantial increases to their staff and their drivers after actually before the millage was passed. Can you comment on that at all?
So they are basically trying to do the same thing that we're doing, is keeping their employees in competitive with the comparables in the area. So they did give out raises, yes.
I knew they gave out raises.
Yeah. But they wanted to be in line with their comparables, just like, we've been trying to do here.
Okay.
So they're not underpaid.
And it's not extravagant.
I don't know, there's some of their drivers are getting up to 18% increase. I don't know about you, but that seems like a big number.
I didn't know that it was
Depends on
that
where they
much,
started at.
but I can check on it, or you can,
Yeah.
I can maybe reach out to.
I'll reach out.
Okay.
Jerry,
I was hoping Art would talk about this. The last health department meeting. We made an offer to Dan Thorell to be the health officer. We're working on a contract. We're kind of pretty much there. We're getting it going through legal and having the board look at it. Probably he would be taking over near the end of November. They're gonna work out good. He also discussed that we would have to look at the medical director's contract with Dr. Meyerson. And they'll start that at the next personnel and finance meeting in September. Coincides with the MAC conference, I believe, in the middle of that. Betsy Valley Trail. You know, Rebecca's still here. We had an Eagle Scout, Thomas Edwards, came and talked about a project that he would like to do, and it involved the signs with the QR code and all that stuff, and put it out throughout the trail. And there's an app that you download, and the app will give you 3 words to say that'll help the 911 to actually be able to direct somebody to where the location you're at. And sounded like a good idea. We gave him permission to move forward with that project. Quite an undertaking, to say the least, but I feel pretty confident about that. We also were asked to recommend to the Board of Commissioners from the TARP group to recommend turning over management to the Village of Thompsonville, and this was for the TARP project in T-ville only, where they want to build the basically the old train station and a little park there. But the trail would still be maintained by the management council at this point in time. In case we pave it or something like that, the village would not be responsible for that. I think it's just a paperwork thing with the DNR. But some of that land is the DNR's. And they have to move the caboose and they have to look up other things. That was discussed and we didn't get it out to you guys yet. At that point in time, they did the repairs on the Frankfurt area. Plumbers came in there and completed them in 1 day. Everybody seems to be satisfied with, that's where the roots were growing through the trail. And we're supposed to get the other section over here on Crystal Drive taken care of shortly. We were given the opportunity for a $40,000 grant plus the extra money that was left over in the management council's fund. So I think the whole total was in the $80-some thousand range. So we would have about 50 of it, close to 50 of it covered. There was a $10,000 donation given for that section. Right now, the Friends are controlling that. We need to talk as how that's gonna be taken care of. And it didn't, I was told before it was for paving, but after I've read this stuff, it was for any kind of upkeep on that, so that would be helpful. And the Friends had offered to pay for the whole thing, so this just helps them save money for the next section or whatever. Went to the MAC workers' comp meeting. Dividends will be sent out in the next couple of weeks. They have 4 million to distribute, which is over what we got last year, so we'll get at least what we got last year, plus a little more. And then there was a little MAC update, and probably everybody's heard this, but they have increased revenue sharing at the state level, but it is only focused at high crime rate. So it encompasses only 15 counties in the entire state. I don't know where you go from there. So, just report, right. Plain Township, the planning commission chair, Dave Long, passed away. And I know Rhonda probably knows him and stuff, and just he got sick, got cancer real quick, and he was gone very fast, so we're really gonna miss him. And they also discussed the operational, the L 4029 and the operational millage. That go up for vote in 26,
For ours,
or is that because we did what we passed at the Headley?
we will put something back on the ballot in 2026. Yes.
That would be all covered, encompassed together, right?
Yeah,
The
we would.
townships and everybody?
Yep,
Okay.
townships are part of our.
I tried to explain, but didn't
Yep.
work out too well. And we did discuss after the meeting, the hazardous mitigation plan. And thanks to Rebecca, she's coming to our next meeting so we can get this straightened out. The supervisor said it went to his junk mail, so we'll go from there. Let's see. Last night at Village of Thompsonville, they had some repaving done on a couple of roads, Second Street, I believe. And then they had discovered that they were originally asked to use some of the ARPA money, which they had put into a CD. And the maintenance guy was asked, I guess, not to use it all, but I was like, it went. So they gotta pay for it. So it's gonna cost them a little bit to take the CD out early. But the roads needed it. And the last thing that was kind of brought up there that, and this is kind of addressed to the building department, they're still having issues on, they're installing the water meters and then they have to come back in and inspect. And the inspections, the closest they're building is will give you a day. Well, that's okay, except a couple of times they didn't show up. And that's a concern. I don't know if the problem is lying with more mechanical. Or if supposedly they're calling the homeowners to set up a day. You'd think they'd be able to come up 4-hour window of some sort. This is concerning to me because I hate to ask residents, assuming they have nothing else to do but sit there all day. To do this, we should be able to get a little better. And maybe I need to make a call to Bert. I don't know, but we need to try to speed this up because I think they're at about 30% with the water meters now. They got a ways to go. That's what I got. Thank you.
Questions, Gary?
I can tell you that other counties, while they don't provide specific times when they're gonna be there, the morning of inspections, they post their schedule online, so you can see where you fall in the order of inspections. If you're at the end of the list, you can plan on near the end of the day. I do know our building department is very accommodating in the sense that, they will provide a heads up call if it's requested. But yeah,
Okay.
I think it might be worth a conversation to see if we could,
So they will call you if they're on their way or supposedly, or
I've made that request
Okay.
and I believe they're honoring that. So, but I do think that there are improvements that could be made.
I'm gonna give Bert a call.
Might be worth that
next.
conversation. You mentioned the MAC conference. Katie, what's the dates of that? And are all of the commissioners going?
No. So the MAC conference is the 24th through the 26th. The 24th is in the evening, so we shouldn't have issues with our meeting because it starts afternoon, evening. Afternoon is kind of just check in, and 12 to 6:30 is registration. Gary, Karen, Tim, you are who's going. And then I will be there, as well as Rose is gonna come and check out a couple of the training sessions as well, because there's some really good ones. They have finalized the agenda, which I was gonna touch on in my update, so.
Katie, what's the cost of that conference or convention?
$415.
You know, and I know that you'd like to have more representation there, but I can't attend all of it. Yeah, I don't want to waste the taxpayers' dollars either. That's my hesitation.
Yeah, they there's no partial conference rate, unfortunately.
Gary, you had brought up the townships, when they were talking about their operating, and it being indefinite, then now it has to be changed to renewal. I've run into that in a couple of townships. Apparently the, L 429 came out from Brianna, and it says indefinite on there.
Mhm.
But my understanding was they have to change that to whatever date is going to, they need to approve it with a renewal date on it, not indefinite anymore. Is that correct?
So the millage language that was approved in August was for 25, 26 inclusive. So for the 24 tax year, it still would say indefinite, and then it changes for the 25, 26 to the new date timing.
Okay.
So the millage language was 25, 26 inclusive. So we kept it the same for the 2024 tax.
Okay. Thanks for the clarification.
Because I think the only reason I brought it up was because they made it sound like they would have to put it on the ballot. I'm sure it's a combination.
No, when it was, I mean, that was all a Headley.
Mhm.
It's all tied to each other.
Well, I never waded into that conversation. I was just listening to it. And, one of them struck out indefinite and put these dates in there. So they're gonna, Brianna will probably have to get with them, right?
We can connect with them on the dates and the indefinite, all that good stuff.
Yeah, it's Inland Township.
Gary, you mentioned Dan Thurell. Isn't he the health officer right now?
Yeah, he's. We only get him 1 day a week.
Okay.
So, and we offered that job. He lives in Travers. I think that was part of it. He's been driving to Petoskey. By taking this, he will take a pay cut. But I think he's more in tune. That group up there's been a little rough to say the least, and they've been changing a lot of the membership. And I think there's more requirements. They have their own lab and Ken's a little more local, so
Is he taking a full-time position now?
yes,
Okay.
Sometime in November.
yeah.
Yeah, and by the way, with that, even though Dan was a known quantity to us, I have to tell you, his resume just stood above everybody else's. To me, there was never even any question about it. I was glad that he was willing to take a cut and pay, but it's kind of probably where he's at in his life right now.
I think he's gonna be a huge asset for the,
Because you've got some senior managers that are retiring 12 months or less there.
our finance gal. Yeah.
So, because we're talking about health department, I recently, this goes into the, well and septic. Lady purchased a home in Elmira Township, Pearl Lake. She had her property surveyed, so she knew exactly where the boundaries were. She had an inclination that her drain field, that her property line was possibly being challenged by the neighbor's drain field. I believe there's a 10-foot setback. Sanitarian said that there's 7 feet of drain field in violation of. So what gets me about that is that drain field had to be inspected by somebody from the health department when it was installed. So they didn't do verification on the property line to make sure they had their 10-foot setback. The homeowner wants it evacuated. I don't want that stuff on my property. I don't know what the neighbor lady who's being encroached on does not want it on her accessing her property. So I don't know what the response from the neighborhood homeowner. She lives downstate someplace. But the way I looked at it was, this is a violation of the health department's own rules. If they didn't verify the property line and inspected it and okayed it with it encroaching on 7 feet, there's an issue.
I don't know that they would. I would put the blame on the contractor that put it in and did not know where the property lines were. That's where I would go, but I'm not, I don't know.
I did the same thing, but because I have some background in that, normally on the permits, it says 5 feet setback, mandatory 10 feet setback, da, 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 da. Well, it's up to both of them then to verify where the property line is, the homeowner and the excavator. Because I know if I put something in and I'm in violation, I'm gonna get called on it.
Right.
Because that's the rules. I haven't had a chance to talk to Zach since. But the lady being encroached on is pretty adamant that she wants it moved. Which will be,
Yeah, that's not a real easy thing to do.
trust me. And the area where it has to get moved, so now we're gonna separate, take this out and add it onto this side, now we gotta cut some trees. So it'll be interesting, but I'll keep
Yeah,
you up to date.
I don't know who's responsible for the one.
I can just, going by the dates and somewhat, I can just about bet who the sanitarian was.
I can't imagine that the health department would have responsibilities for boundaries. I would think that whoever contracted for the job should be responsible for staying within the boundaries.
But if the health department puts on their permit 10 feet minimum, then the contractor has to go by that.
Okay,
And if it's not on there, it's the health department's issue.
debatable.
Well, sure, but still, if it had a permit and it got inspected and it's encroaching on the property, somebody's liable.
Were you the contractor?
No, not on that one.
Okay.
Katie?
Great. Just a few things. I went to Inland Township's meeting last night with Tom King and Chris Parrish. We answered questions and gave some education to the township regarding the EMS millage primarily, and touched on the jail as well as the handouts that are general election information. I know that Tom and Chris are planning to go to other townships. I'm gonna go as well as I'm able to. Some are just on bad nights where I don't have the husband home to watch the kids. So, but I'm trying to go to the townships as well to help out with that. The millage request, we've also received good feedback on those one pagers. If you need more, please let us know. Rose will print some more for you. They're out front on everyone's counters, which we appreciate them all putting them on their counters on the website. And again, just trying to get them into the townships to get that information out there to the community. As Commissioner Nye alluded to, Friday, there's a tour of Thompsonville. If you could let me know if you're able to attend that tour, we are going to have a Benzie bus to tootle us around. And Shelley is working on a narrative to kind of just talk about all the exciting things happening in Thompsonville. The plan is to do Geno's for dinner afterwards. If you're able, you're not required to. We do have the game that night as well. So we might have to speed things up, but the plan is to meet at the park there across from Geno's at 4 o'clock to jump on the bus and have a tour of Thompsonville. So just let me know if you're able to. I just need to be able to look out for folks is all. We don't want to leave anybody behind. Iron Man, a group of us sat down yesterday with the city of Frankfurt to talk about Iron Man and just kind of the needs and the wants and the logistics of Iron Man in general. We expressed some of our concerns and wants if any other events are to occur in the future. The city of Frankfurt was very amenable to those requests that the county has regarding that event. We all see and understand that the event is overall positive for the county's local economy, but obviously we have to work within our means. And so we had a good discussion regarding that yesterday. The opioid RFP is live on the website. It'll also be in the newspaper coming up, and I'll try to put it in the newspaper a couple of times just to get it out there. But right in the RFP bid opportunities page on our website is the opioid RFP. We do have that open until December 11th. We will get some good proposals that are brought in. We did receive additional funding yesterday from a new settlement that just happened by McKinsey. I don't know how to say it. But that we did get more funding again yesterday. So we have 200,000 plus to be spending in opioid dollars. The National Association of Counties puts out a curriculum for elementary students as well as high school students that is all about county government, local government. And so they were gracious enough to send me 80 activity books for the elementary age students, and I've given those to the teachers and asked them to teach local government. And they are going to. Sounds like second grade is kind of the year where they talk a lot about community. And so just trying to continue to push that into the community, to teach kids about local government and county government, to get people excited to want to serve in those public offices. I know they're little, but it starts when they're little. And so the National Associations of Counties was really gracious in sending me those activity books free of charge. And they also have all the activity books in a digital format on their website, which I also shared with the staff. And so hoping to just keep that going in the schools and teaching kids about, being involved in your community. So super exciting. The activity books highlight all the elected offices. Everyone's assigned a photo, a little drawing. They're fun. They're a lot of fun. And then Mercury Broadband. So they have communicated with me in the last week. Very exciting. So of course, they're still committing to doing the build. They don't want to give up the build. They haven't alluded to giving up any builds. But they did indicate to me that while they quoted the 2027 year as the anticipated build for our area, that was worst case scenario, and that they intend to speed up the schedule if they're able to, and that they're actively working on speeding up that schedule, and that 2027 is worst case scenario for build in Benzie. Doesn't seem like a lot, but I think that's a big step in the whole relationship of expanding the broadband in those parts of Benzie County. So they are at least communicating with me now, hoping to just continue to communicate with them and hone in on their expansion plans. And, I've offered to them any assistance as far as placing additional stuff on our website and those sorts of things. But they are saying 2027 is worst case scenario, that they hope and anticipate it sooner. So the conversation is at least going again. It took them a while to get back to me, but they did get back to me.
And what districts is Mercury?
Gary's. So, but at least they're communicating. So that's a big step. And then I did share with you via email lots of information regarding broadband in general, from infrastructure to funding for the digital equity, digital compass. And so lots of conversation happening regarding broadband. Mara is holding their annual summit here at Crystal Mountain coming up in October. I will be on a panel to discuss broadband expansion at that conference. So exciting things still happening in broadband, a little quieter just because a lot of worker bees out there, but things are still happening quickly, which is exciting. So any questions for me?
The e-bill thing
Eville this Friday.
this Friday.
Yep, 4 p.m. at the park across from Gino's.
Comes if I can't get out of Gino.
Lucky one.
Katie, just a couple of comments. First, I want to acknowledge your presence yesterday at the township. You and Chris and Tom, I think, did a great job tag teaming. The one thing that occurred to me that I think we'd benefit from, and this would include also the jail millage, if you can get somebody from that township to be advocating like Chris did.
Mhm.
I mean, you're not going to get any better than that because he's also a member of EMS, but I thought he did a really great job of presenting
He did.
for us, and I hope that you pass that along. And I'm always comfortable when you're in a room presenting too. On those flyers that you put together, I think they're a great tool. I tell you, you have a large number of voters that come in and out of political action centers. I'd encourage us to get those to them.
Okay.
I know that I have given them now to the Republicans, and
Okay.
a lot of people are coming in and out of those action centers right now that will be voters.
Okay.
So I'd hope that we would consider that. And I want to echo what you said about Mercury Wireless. We were hearing crickets from them.
Yes.
So just the fact they finally answered,
Big
I would
step.
hope we see something before 2027.
Yeah, he indicated in writing that's worst case scenario.
Good.
And Katie, do you have a calendar when you are going to be visiting different townships?
So I know that Homestead tomorrow night, but I can't make it, but Tom and Chris will be there.
If you can just
Yeah,
email us
Frankfurt
that
has
so
been
we can
contacted.
get it out to Crystal Lake and Lake and.
The idea is to essentially every next meeting that's available this month and first part of October, ballots will go out September 20-something,
21st is a.
21st. So the idea is to try to get in front of as many boards as possible.
I think just to give
by
us
that
a heads
timeline.
up so we
Okay.
can let the boards know and that people know you're going to be there for that.
We're actually getting on the agendas. And so Chris
Okay.
Spence is being contacted to be added to the agenda. We
Okay.
were on the agenda for Inland Homestead. It's supposed to be on the agenda. So we're going about it in that rather than public comment.
Nope,
We feel
that's
it's a
fine.
little bit more impactful.
Yes, thank you.
Just to clarify, I have to have them to the local clerk September 21st. They have to start sending them out for AV September 26th.
So we would anticipate trying to get to as many as we can by that timeline or right around that timeline.
Okay,
Because a lot of votes are cast absentee these days.
Maybe do you think it's fair to say that 40 or 50% of the votes may come by mail-in?
Oh, heavens, yes,
Yeah.
yes.
So we essentially have two election cycles. We got late September and late October, early November.
Yeah, we have the next few weeks, all of us, to really get that information out there to the
well, that
voters.
was my concern, that it was before the early or whatever they're calling it.
Hmm.
Okay,
And I think it's great that you're there promoting the EMS
yeah,
millage, but the real killer would be that jail millage.
Yeah,
So we got to keep that in front of people too.
I'm asking for feedback too when I distribute those flyers. I
Oh,
want to
good.
know from the community that they think it's a good tool and Karen
right.
said that she's receiving that kind of feedback, but I think that's good for you to know.
Yeah.
That the community thinks it's a good tool.
yeah,
So-
any way to tweak it, add to it,
Yeah.
do something different. We need to know that so that we can, always improve.
Anything else? We don't have any presentations, any correspondence that we need to be made aware of. Okay, brings us to our final public input. Anybody like to share during public input? Close public input and look for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
11:32.
Just saying, everybody in 30 minutes.
So.
Brianna, in 30. Did I talk to you before you?
Yeah,
got
30
here?
minutes.
Hey, hey, hey.